Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how. Hello, everybody. Welcome to DC Trainings. I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and I am excited about starting our webinar today with you because we're just coming out of the seminar from last weekend. And I just really want to, from my heart, say thank you to all the doctors who came out and joined me for the day in my office. We had a great day. We talked about chiropractic, but most importantly, this was module 6, which is goals and marketing. And we dove into really structuring your goals in a way that makes them so much more tangible and realistic for both the coming year and even long term. So we talked about that. We also dove into marketing and talked about the most effective ways to market your practice, given the current day and age, of course, coming out of some of the different environments that were happening during COVID. And now, moving back into some of the stuff we were doing before. So it was really a great day. It was great, again, to spend the day with you. And I want to say thank you to everyone who came out and joined us. Today, we're going to dive into the first section of Module 6, which is Goals and Marketing. And this first section is on achieving your goals. But I want to set the stage today with just a sharing from my heart how important this is for myself and my family. One of the goals that my wife and I had when we first bought our first home was that we would have our children at home. We were talking about having children, we'd made plans, and we really wanted it to go through having a home birth for our children. And we were able to do that. And I really firmly believe that was able to happen specifically because we set goals. We had a written birth plan. We had full communication with our midwife and with the doula, and they knew exactly what we wanted. We knew what was going to happen if something went wrong, because I know that's a common fear, and we knew that too, that something could perhaps go wrong. So we really planned and laid out our steps, and we had a written birth plan. Now, there was a point in the delivery when my wife was really in transition, they call it, and when she thought, I don't think I can do this on my own. And we were looking at each other, and obviously I'm there to support her in the delivery, and we were looking at each other and starting to get really stressed about maybe this isn't something that we can do. And she started to get sort of panicked and thinking, oh, wow, this is really heavy. And of course, for all the ladies on the call, those of you who have had children, that transition period can be a little intense. Of course, I'm a man saying that, and the women are probably saying a little intense. What are you, crazy? But there was that point where we looked at each other and we said, you know what, we're going to trust innate on this one. And we have everything written out. We set this goal, and we looked at the midwife and we said, is there anything abnormal happening right now? And she said to us, no, there's not. Nothing right now that's happening is abnormal. This is actually normal. And yes, it's a bit scary and it's very intense, but everything's normal and your baby is healthy. And this is how having a baby works. And because of that, because of our goals and because of our written birth plan, we were able to decide we're going to move forward with this right now. We're not going to jump up and pack up and rush to the hospital. We're going to go forward. And then as it turned out, everything was normal. Everything was great. I got to catch our newborn baby, and we were able to, we have our great children and our family as a result of that process. So I share that with you because that's a big goal. That's a big commitment to have your child at home and organize everything so that it's ready to go when the baby comes. Now, I know many of you set goals on Saturday that are personal for you, that are big goals, that are things that you're going to have to work towards. You're going to have to lay out action steps. And some of those action steps might not happen the first time around. It might be that you have an action step on your goal plan and it falls short or you don't hit it. But that's the process that BJ Palmer called slipping and checking, right? Slipping and checking. Maybe we slip a little bit, but we check our progress. We say, yep, we're on track for that goal. And we get back up and we keep going. So today is about that. Our first section in this module is called Achieving Your Goals. This is the sequence that we're going to go through. We have 8 specific sections that we're going to go through in the course of this module, all of which have to do with setting goals and marketing your practice. So I want you to think big and think, what is it that I can accomplish in the coming module, to where when I look back over the past 8 weeks, I'm really proud of what I accomplished. And for me, obviously, one of the most proudest things that I've ever accomplished in my life, and I'm sure that my wife would agree with me on this, is the birth of our children. And we were able to set that goal to have our children at home, and they were born at home, and now they're 18 and 20 years old. So that was many years ago, but it's still that fresh in my mind because it was such a clear goal, and it took a lot to accomplish that, and we made it happen. And I know you will too, through what I'm about to show you. So let's go ahead and jump right in. In achieving your goals, I want you to ask yourself this question: have you failed to reach your goals only because you didn't set goals to begin with? Another way to say that is, if you're not where you want to be right now, is it because you haven't set any goals, right? If you have goals that are clearly written, and I know that one of our DC Trainings members is on the call right now, and he's had a goal to move into his own practice. He already has a practice, and he's wanting to move into his own practice. And I'm really proud of him for that. He's doing a great job. But I think that the clarity that comes with knowing exactly what type of practice you want to move into, and really determining and detailing what is it that I want to move into, and where do I see myself in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? Where do I see myself? And that's going to really help you to crystallize the path that you take to get there. I shared a lot of quotes with you on Saturday at the seminar. Here's another one for you, and you may want to write this down, but the quote is this: the path of least resistance leads to crooked rivers and crooked men. I've shared that. I laugh because I've shared that with my kids, and they say, "Oh, Dad, yeah, right, whatever." But think about that. The path of least resistance leads to crooked rivers and crooked men. Now, obviously, I don't want you to turn into a crooked person and do things shady or anything like that, but it goes to say that the path of least resistance doesn't always get you where you want to be, and it doesn't always land you in the right spot, does it? So I thought that would be a perfect addition to what we talked about over the weekend. So there's a nice quote for you. Okay, let's keep going. One of the things that was important to do for this weekend was to write out your yearly goals, right? The yearly goals are what your plan is in the coming year as it relates to your practice. Now, I know there's lots of things that you can measure in your practice, one of which might be, how much sleep am I getting at night? And I know there's some of you on the call right now who've been in practice a long time, and you've sort of worked out how to detail, or how to balance your life and get enough sleep at night. But for those of you who are newer in practice, it's sometimes, you're like a hamster on a wheel. You're just running and running and running and running and really not feeling like you're getting anywhere. This is going to help you to do that. So in laying out these yearly goals, I want you to decide exactly what you're going to do. The clearer you are about your goals, the more likely you'll accomplish those goals. So for new patients, if I was to ask you right now, what is your goal in terms of the number of new patients that you're going to see in 2023? What's your goal? Now, I know what mine is, and I'm not going to share my number with you because it's personal to me, and I want you to come up with your own number. And I'll share more of that at the next seminar in January. But the point of me asking you this question is, how fast can you come up with the answer? Do you know absolutely what your goal is? How many new patients are you going to see in 2023? Boom. And it should just roll off your tongue. Now, if you aren't comfortable with saying that number, then you've got some planning to do, because an unwritten goal is a wish, and wishes rarely come true, right? So if you're not sure, though, I can help you formulate how you're going to get there if you're not sure what your goal is. So for example, on the new patients, if I don't really know how many new patients I want to see next year, but I do know that on a Monday when I'm seeing my patients and we're open for a full day, I'd like to see 2 new patients. Let's say, well, actually, I'll just use my numbers. I don't mind sharing with you. I'm going to use my numbers. My goal on Monday is to see 4 new patients every Monday. That's my goal. And I'm crystal clear about it. So on Monday, I'm going to write in a 4. Now on Tuesday, I'm only open a half a day. So since it's a half day, my goal for Tuesdays is 2. Now, what's your number? How many, not only how many new patients are you going to see next year, how many new patients are you going to average on Tuesdays over the course of next year? Now, if you're closed on Tuesdays, that's fine. Replace that with a day that you're open and put in your own number. But that's how specific I want you to be with these goals, because the more specific you are, the more likely you are to reach those goals. If you're not sure what your total yearly goal is, just start with the day and then multiply it out. So as an example, if my goal on Mondays is 4 new patients and my goal on Tuesdays is 2 new patients, and that's it for the whole week, that means that my weekly goal for new patients is 6. I can then take that weekly goal, multiply it by 4 to get the month, multiply that by 3 to get the quarter. I don't have a row on here for the month because, well, for the reasons we'll talk about as we go through this module, one of the topics in this module, or the weeks, is on meetings, and meetings are really critical to your success. So we would multiply that month by 3 to get the quarter, and then we would multiply the quarter times 4 to get the year. And we can do it in reverse if we want. If I say, well, next year I want to see 500 new patients or 100 new patients, I can divide that by 4 to get the quarter, divide it by 3 to get the month, divide it by 4 again to get the week, and then by however many days you're open, that's going to get you down to the day. So whether you're going from the big picture goal to the daily goal, or from the daily goal to the big picture goal, either way, structure your goals and set them up for next year. That way, you know you'll be on track and you'll be much more likely to hit your goals, right? That's what I'm after. I want to see you hit your goals. That's the yearly goals. Before I clear this screen, though, I do want to say, if you haven't filled this out, there is magic in thinking big. There's magic in it. So if you haven't filled it out, maybe you're busy, maybe you aren't seeing how important this could be or whatever. I just want to, again, share with you how important it is to think big, set goals, and there is magic in thinking big. So let's make sure we set our goals. Okay, so let's keep going. Now we're going to start to, now that we've written down the goals and what they are, now we're going to talk about how to not only achieve those goals, that's our topic for this week, but also how to structure them so it's much more likely that you're going to reach them. So as you can see on your screen, measuring goals, we're going to go by time, by amounts, and by whom. By boiling it down into these 3 areas and following these steps for each one of your goals, how much time do I have to hit the goal? What is the goal? How is it measurable? And who's responsible for the goal? This is going to then tie into your practice. So let's talk about by time. Obviously, if we're measuring goals, like if I was to come to you, doctor, and say, I'm going to help you with a goal. What would you like? And let's say your goal to me was, I want to double my practice. And now I know some of you already have big practices. So the thought of doubling your practice would probably make you think, holy smokes, I don't think I even want that, let alone need that. But let's just use a big goal to start with, right? Maybe you don't want to double your practice. Maybe you want to add 10% to your practice. Maybe you want to add 25%, but let's just say double. Let's say you want to double your practice. Well, when I say double your practice, when is that going to happen? Well, is it going to happen tomorrow? Probably not. Is it going to happen next week? Probably not there either. But could it happen by the end of the year? Next year, I mean? Well, now that's a big picture goal. That could happen, but maybe we don't want to wait that long. Maybe we want to have the practice doubled within a 3-month window if you're just starting out. That's a realistic goal. Or if you already have a pretty big practice, maybe it's going to take 6 months to double the practice. Whatever that is, take that number and lock it in. Once you lock it in, either work forward to set the goal for the year or work backward to bring it all the way down to the day in terms of what that is. So we have daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. And once again, that ties right in with what I showed you on the yearly goals. Okay, so you can use that form, crystallize your goals, and then start to watch things transpire. Now, what I like to do, just to bring this in for a landing, is I like to start with the goal for the year. And what's really great, because I've had this meeting already with my team for next year, is I like to start out the meeting by just saying, okay, gang, what do you want to do next year? We're going to talk about the category of new patients. What would you like to do? Now, my CAs know that the new patients that come into the practice directly relates proportionally to how big of a paycheck they're going to get. See, we have production bonuses, which I'll be teaching you in this module, but they know, I mean, they could say, we want to triple our new patients because that's going to double my paycheck if we triple our new patients. But then they also have enough common sense and experience to know that tripling new patients would be a whole lot of work. We'd probably have to hire 5 or 10 more new CAs, right? So keeping it realistic comes with experience. But to follow our example, if we're going to double the practice, then we start to measure the new patients. And that's how I like to start the meeting off with my team. Hey, team, what do you want to do next year? Where would you like to take it? Do you want to see your paycheck go up? Are you happy with how much you're making? Are you happy with the number of new patients we're serving? Do you feel like there's gaps in the schedule to where you're kind of sitting around not seeing new patients when you would like to? Or do you feel like new patients are so stacked up that it's holding us back from other areas in the practice, and the new patients are dropping out because they're not being seen as quickly as they should be? Or are our new patients waiting too long because we're so busy? See, all these factors become part of that discussion around, if we were to set this huge goal, what's the ripple effect from that? Is it a good one or is it not so good? And so those kinds of discussions will help you crystallize with yourself and with your team where you want to take these goals in the coming year. So I'm just using new patients as an example. But again, you want to relate that to patient visits. You want to relate that to revenue. We're actually going to relate it to some other areas before we finish today as well. So let's keep going because that's the time frame, right? Now let's look at the amounts, right? By amounts. So exactly what are we measuring? See, that's again, let's go back to the doubling your practice. Well, obviously doubling your practice, that's a very clear amount, right? We've got dates now, we've got a time frame. Now we know we want to double the practice. I like to look at certain factors in terms of the practice and how all these numbers are intertwined. So on your screen here, you can see that by amounts means that there's new patients, there's patient visits, there's revenue, there's also individual success rates, there's profit sharing bonuses. So these are the amounts that we start to measure. Now let's just take new patients, right? We talked about a time frame of doubling the practice. Well, if we're going to double the practice, we probably want to see more new patients. So if we're going to look at new patients, well, we want to see that we're doubling our new patients maybe. Or see, and this is what's so fun. I see Dr. Kanich on the call today. Dr. John, you and I have trained together with DC Trainings for, gosh, I think more than a decade now. And you know that all these factors are connected, right? All these, as we call them, focuses in DC Trainings, meaning we could double our new patients in an effort to double the practice. But if I flooded the office with twice as many new patients and we don't have systems in place to retain those patients, we end up with a leaky bucket situation where we're pouring water in, but as fast as we're pouring it in, it's leaking out. And those new patients that are leaving the practice because the practice was not organized enough to retain them may be leaving with a bad taste in their mouth, and we don't want that. So in looking at these variables, again, around just doubling the practice, I'm just using that as our arbitrary example today. Doubling the practice might not mean doubling new patients. It could mean let's increase new patients by 25%, but let's decrease our missed appointments by 50%. Wow, well, there's a thought, right? Because if we're decreasing our new patients our missed appointments by 50%, that means we're retaining more patients longer. We don't have to pour as many new patients into the practice, and the practice will grow. So these are factors, and we could tie this all the way through revenue, which I'll get to that in a minute, but that's by amount. So we're looking at time, amount, and then the next one is by whom. And this, again, comes into play, like I say, with my team meeting. When I meet with my team and say, okay, everybody, what do you want to do next year? What's our goal? And I will say, I've had a couple of CAs recently in the last couple of years who joined the practice and then they left for whatever reason. And my team can quickly spot somebody who is not on the growth oriented mindset, right? So this is a good example, because when it comes to by whom, everyone on the team gets to contribute because we have assigned accountability. And we'll get into that in our next section on team accountability, but because we're going to cover achieving your goals, team accountability, and then we're going to cover progress reports. But my team will recognize if there's a CA who's not really gung-ho to reach these goals. I'll just on a tangent, I'll say that it might be because they're inexperienced. They don't have quite the experience as the rest of the team because they're a new CA. So they're sort of going along with it just to learn and see how this all works. That's fine. But you may also have a CA that is saying, I'm just happy with the way things are. I don't want to work harder. Let's just coast this out. And if you're not at the numbers where you feel like you want to be at with the practice as a whole, then that's not a place to be complacent, is it? It's not a place to be passive. We want team players on board that are looking for the same growth that the rest of the team is striving for. So everybody has to be on board with that. So in this section, when we talk about by whom, we want to have specific accountability for each person. And any of those people that are accountable for a certain result need to be responsible and proactive for making that happen. Now, proactive might also mean they're coming to the team with a problem, right? Let's say your patient visit number is less than 100% of your success, or the success rate is less than 100% of your goal. Then you want to have a CA on your team who's coming to the meetings and saying, hey, listen, everybody, I'm doing everything I can, and this number is still falling short. I need your help. That's a great question. That's a great response to a situation. How can we work together to make this happen? And that I see that so often in my own team meetings where there's an issue that we all work hard to solve and we're working together. So watch for that in your team meetings, and watch that in this section, the by whom section, because you want to make sure that anybody who is fixed on a goal, they know what the time frame for the goal is, and they know what the goal is, that they are participating with the team to make that goal happen. Really important, really important. Now, you may see I'm focusing on the practice, right? I'm talking about specific goals within the practice. We're talking about doubling a practice. We're talking about new patients. I'm going to shift over for a second, because if you're excited like I am about this topic, you'll see how this can tie into all the different aspects of your practice, right? There can be so many areas, or sorry, not your practice, your life, all the different aspects of your life, because this can really apply to so many things. Even back to my example about my wife and I deciding to have a home birth with both of our children, right? So let's keep going here and start to tie this into the big picture. So on this screen, you can see that there's this wheel. And when a wheel is balanced, I know this isn't the best example, but this wheel has 5 spokes. But in life, there's so much more to it. So let's imagine a wheel that has 8 spokes. And those 8 spokes are all perfectly balanced in a way that that wheel can roll the furthest distance possible because the spokes are balanced. So that's important, because on this wheel, we can see that there's family, there's health, there's spiritual, social, mental, financial, career, and adventure. Now, we just took the first majority of this webinar today talking about one spoke on the wheel, and that's career, isn't it? We didn't even really get it. We got into revenue a little bit, but mainly it's career. So to double your practice, and that's going to fulfill that career aspect of your goals. I also started out talking about family, right? And the whole topic of having a childbirth. That's 2 of them. But imagine if you took every one of these spokes on the wheel and you went to the level or the depth that I just went into with career, that you set specific goals in each one of these areas that you want to accomplish in your life. And I gave examples of this, so I'm not going to do this today on our webinar. Our time's a little shorter, but at the seminar, I gave you examples for each one of these. And then I even tied it in at the end of the seminar with our core values and our mission statements, and really gave you a big picture view of how valuable this can be for balancing your life and going where you want to go and having things happen for you that you want to make happen. But I encourage you, have all these spokes in place and set specific goals around each one. Let's go to this next section here, which was on planning for financial success. Now, maybe you have career goals, maybe you have health goals, maybe you have family goals, but none of those goals are going to happen if you are unhealthy and can't get out of bed in the morning, right? So it's really important that you prioritize those areas for all of them. And then you can go out and you can say, okay, I want to make my financial spoke on the wheel that much stronger because I've got my health to back me up. I've got my family to back me up. I've got all this balance in my life. Now I'm going to really spend some time focusing on financial goals. So once that happens, I want to make sure that you're saving for success. And in chiropractic, because we don't have, we're not part of a corporate sponsor where you're going to have endless retirement or your lifetime of income after you retire, right? We have to plan for this in chiropractic. And not only do we have to plan for this as chiropractors, we want to plan for this with our team too. If you have CAs who've been with you for years, I have CAs who've been with me for 15, 16 years. I just had a CA who was with us for 6 years. She moved on, but she actually came in and got adjusted on Friday last week. So we're still connected, but you'll have CAs with you for a long time, and you want their position with you to be a career move, not just a short-term job, not just it didn't work out because I wasn't making enough to make ends meet. No, this is a career move. These people are investing their lives into the principles of chiropractic and helping the world to be a healthier place through patients who are subluxation free, right? So we want that to be a career move, and in pursuit of promoting that, we're going to help. I'm helping you, but I want you to help your team set these accounts up too, because these are the accounts that will lead to long-term success for everybody within your practice. So meet with your CAs, or maybe your CAs are on the call right now, and you can set these up. So there's 3 different bank accounts. There's the wealth account, the emergency account, and the pleasure account. For your wealth account, every time you get a paycheck, you're going to put 10% into that wealth account. Every time you get a paycheck, you're going to put 5% into your emergency account, and you're going to put 5% into your pleasure account. Just do it on blind faith. Trust me, okay? You'll be blown away at how fast that money starts to accumulate in those accounts. And the beauty is you're paying yourself first, and then you start to live below your means, meaning that of all the whatever money you're making on your paycheck, or as chiropractors, a lot of times it's in the form of a draw. When the money comes into the account, it's in the form of a draw. But either way, what you're doing is you're taking that money and you're putting it into your savings, and you're forcing yourself to live below your means so that you have extra money to save, and you are saving it, right? We can all spend an unlimited amount of money, but we want to make sure that we're saving it. I just set up these accounts at my bank because it was easy, because when I went to the bank, and I still have these accounts set up in this way, there was just these 3 accounts. It was one bank. I'd go and just deposit them. And I would save that money until I had a total of $10,000. Once I had $10,000, then I would call Charles Schwab, because Charles Schwab has, and there's other banks that do this too, but the one I chose was Charles Schwab. They will put me in touch with the right person to purchase tax-free muni bonds, which I enjoy, because tax-free muni bonds means that once you buy that bond, it's tax-free as long as it's in your state. So for me, I'm in California. It's a California tax-free bond. So I'm not going to pay taxes on the income that comes from a result of that bond. And they're AAA rated. So that income is basically locked in. I'm going to be earning interest on that bond. It's not going to fluctuate with the stock market. It's not going to fluctuate at all. It's AAA rated, insured, and it's tax-free. So I like those. But again, what I would do is set up the 3 accounts with your bank, and then your emergency account has 6 months of living expenses. Your pleasure account has as much as you want to accumulate to buy your next doodad or special trip. And then the wealth account is going to accumulate that money until you have enough to, and you can decide what you're going to do with it. But in this case, go to Charles Schwab and purchase a tax-free AAA rated insured municipal bond. And then I just transfer that money right into that bond. But let's jump back into our PowerPoint. Now, on the PowerPoint here, you can see big letters, pay yourself first. And the reason why I'm emphasizing this is because I know often that the tendency is, oh, something's come up. I want to spend this money. I've got a bunch of money there. I can splurge. But at the end of the day, when that money is growing with interest for you, you're going to be really happy that you have that accumulating nest egg over many years for security and ultimately retirement. And if you're not sure, if you haven't really seen that happen for you yet, I want to give you an example of how you can see a little bit of money become worth a lot of money just by how you structure your financial planning. So on this next slide here, you can see it says a bar of iron costs $5. Made into horseshoes, it's worth $12. Made into needles, it's worth $3,500. And made into balance springs for watches, it's worth $300,000. Your value is determined by what you are able to make of yourself. So don't shortchange yourself. So when you set up these accounts and you start to see how this really just grows, it's amazing. This is the value of what becomes the reality as you are growing your wealth and saving for your future. Here we go. Now we're going to put this into specific goals. And with these specific goals, what's amazing about this is that you're going to start to build down from the big goal, and you're going to fill in the action steps so that you can see that goal become a reality. Here's these specific examples. Now, in your materials, you have samples of this that I sent to you. So you can take those samples out. I'm not going to go through all of them on this webinar, but as you take those out, read through these examples. You don't have to copy my goals, but this is food for thought for you to develop your own goals. And if you haven't been doing this for a long time, like I have, you can look at these and say, wow, that's a great idea. It might even help you to sort of expand what you think is possible in terms of achieving goals. And I'm going to share this example with you because, and not to brag, I don't want to impose my goals into your goals. That's not my point here. I'm not doing this to brag or for any other reason, just to share with you what's possible, because it's been over 25 years since I got out of chiropractic school, long time. But when I got out of chiropractic school, somebody taught me how to set goals. And I grabbed onto that and said, this is going to work well. I like this. So I set some goals for myself. And what I was able to accomplish based on coming out of chiropractic school was, and I had $85,000 in debt. I know these days that's probably not a lot of money compared to what the students are coming out of chiropractic school with these days in debt. But at that time, I was living with my grandmother, so I didn't have to pay rent. And I had $85,000 in student loans that had to be paid off. But I also wanted to grow my practice. So in pursuit of quickly growing my practice, I set some real concrete goals. And what I accomplished in just 2 years, so 2 years from when I graduated, I had paid off all my student loans, 100% paid off. I also set a goal to collect $100,000 in 1 month. That was a goal that I had, which I accomplished, and to adjust 200 patients in 1 day. So those were my 3 goals in terms of career that I set for myself for 2 years out of practice. So in 2 years, I went from $85,000 in debt, paid it off, wanted to collect $100,000 a month, did that, wanted to see 200 patients in 1 day, check, did that too. Those were my goals, and I was able to accomplish them because I had specific action steps, I had a specific plan, and I knew exactly what I wanted to accomplish in a set time frame. And then lastly, by whom. I was the one responsible for that. Of course, I have to thank the amazing team that I had at the time because they helped me to get there. And I shared some pictures with you when we were at the seminar about that. So just to give you some examples, that's why these are in here. There's financial sample. You can look through that for ideas how to grow your wealth financially and use that as well. Now, you can obviously tell that my philosophy is that when the practice is winning, everybody wins. And that's really important, because if everybody's winning, then we all celebrate together. So on this next picture, this is really where my team comes into play, because I have specific incentives for them. They know what they're accountable for. They know who's accountable for what. They know what the goals are. And when they hit those goals, they win in the form of a larger paycheck. So I really encourage you to set up this bonus with your team. And the way this works is very simple. You establish what your overhead is, and I'll let you go into more detail on this, but you establish what your overhead is per month. Once that number is reached, then your team starts to profit, but with their pay, their wages going up incrementally as your overhead is exceeded. Now, think about that for a second. If let's say your overhead is $10,000 a month, you don't even, until you make $10,000 a month, it's costing you money to run your practice. But beyond $10,000 a month, it's all profit. Well, wouldn't you be willing to give 20% of that profit to your team for making the goal happen? I'm using 20% as an arbitrary number. On the form, you'll see that it's 25 cents per hour. The key on this is that everybody's winning as the practice is growing, or as the practice is profiting, then everybody's winning. So that's the key. So that's what this bonus goes into. And you'll as you read through that, let me know if you have any questions. Email me, join the webinar, let me know, and we'll dive into it together. Now let's go on to the next slide, because the next one is talking about paying yourself first, right? That's where you're going to enjoy long-term financial success. So we're going to pay ourselves first. We're going to save 10% from each paycheck. We're going to maybe invest in some real estate. I would definitely encourage you to buy your first home so that you're not paying rent. So real estate is a great way to secure your financial future. Live below your means. We talked about that. So make sure that's in place. Have separate savings accounts. Now you know which ones, right? Wealth, pleasure, and emergency. Those are your 3 accounts. Next week, we're going to get into team accountability. So we talked today about setting goals. We talked about making sure you know what your goals are. And then we said by what amount, right? What are they? How are you going to measure them? And by when? And then lastly, by whom, right? So by whom is what we're going to talk about next week. And that's team accountability. And we'll get into that together. Of course, for all of you, anything we can do in DC Trainings to help you have the most successful practice of your dreams, just let us know. Send us an email, dctrainings@gmail.com. And other than that, we look forward to talking next week again for our webinar. We're getting close to the holidays, getting close to Thanksgiving. We won't have a webinar on Thanksgiving on that Thursday, but other than that, we won't miss a beat. So I'll look forward to seeing you next week on our upcoming webinar. And as always, keep charging ahead and let us know how we can help.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.